hear me on the mic? Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, my name is Taz Hirani. I work for Click Software, which is a Salesforce company. So a very recent acquisition of Salesforce. We were announced to be acquired on the 1st of August, and the acquisition date completed on the 1st of October. So very, very happy to be part of the Salesforce family. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about onboarding, which I know for many people is a bit of a hot topic. So why do I feel kind of like qualified to talk about kind of this topic? And really, it's been kind of my passion really this year, because in terms of the growth for a company that's about to be acquired, you really do pile a lot of people into the sales team. So this year, we have recruited 60 people into our selling team, which has brought our selling total up to about 150 globally. So I do feel that over the course of this year, it's really been something that's kind of been a key focus area. So I've done a lot of test and succeed and test and fail. And hopefully during the next kind of 20 minutes or so, you're going to hear some of my top tips. So that's what I'm going to get into. 5 top tips, and then a call to action at the end. So let's get on with kind of tip number 1. I think it's kind of obvious really in terms of what I'm talking about is sales onboarding. And it does have some applicability into non-sales, but really people always say know your audience, put yourself into their shoes. And it sounds kind of obvious, but let me just take you back to the last time you changed job. You kind of got to a point where you were, going through an interview process, you accepted that offer. And then on a daily, sometimes hourly basis, you're feeling, oh, wow, what have I just done? Oh, wow, I'm so excited. Oh, wow, should I just tear that agreement up? So you've got somebody who's going through a roller coaster of emotions. They are, happy, sad, excited, going through all these different phases. And you've got to really be cognizant of that when you're thinking about designing your onboarding, because you've got somebody who is a highly geared individual, really looking forward to join your organization. And then they will have times when they're simply a little bit worried. There is a lot of that fear. They're coming into, a situation where they're not going to be the know-it-all. They're going to have to learn a new product. Maybe it's a new market for them. Perhaps it's their first selling role. So really think about your audience when you're designing onboarding, because it's actually quite critically important. Some of you have kind of dynamics where you've got very young starters. For us at Click, we actually have very structured senior sales professionals who've been doing it for a very long time. They're very mature in terms of their selling experience, and they have a very broad range in terms of their styles of learning. As you saw before, you've got those people that really like that self-serve style. They really like videos, on demand, blogs. And then we have the more mature individuals who actually just want you to give them the book. Just give me the manual, I'll get on with it. I know how to sell. I don't really need to know tons about the product, because selling is all about listening and solving customer problems. So you've got very different styles in terms of your audience. So you need to be cognizant about the fact that you really want to harness that enthusiasm. You want to deliver your content in a way that's going to resonate with that individual, and also be delivered in the timely fashion that they want. And this kind of leads me nicely into kind of tip number 2. When does onboarding really start? Well, thinking about your audience, you might have somebody that is in garden leave. So they're actually kind of a bit bored, twiddling their thumbs, not really got much to do. Maybe they want to get going with things. And so for me, you really need to kind of broaden your timeline, because once somebody's signed an offer or a contract, they've made a commitment to join your company and your selling team. They're curious about how it all works. They don't know the unknown. They may have interviewed with a few people. They may have interviewed with many, many people. They might be perusing the internet, doing their research, etc. So for me, once somebody has signed an offer, that for me is when onboarding begins. And wouldn't it be nice if somebody from the company who wasn't in your interview process rang you up and said, "Hi, my name is blah, blah, and I'm going to be here to look after your success in sales. I'm going to be here to help you navigate through. I'm not going to be your boss. I'm not going to be your mentor. I'm just here to help you be successful and steer you through kind of onboarding. That's what we do at Click. And it is such an easy thing to do. Doesn't cost a lot. It's just a phone call. What do we do to prepare that phone call? We may get a CV from the hiring manager or the recruiter. We look through their LinkedIn profile. Doesn't take very long. And, we sometimes, which is really nice, get an introduction from the manager and say, this person's going to give you a call. And we reach out to them over LinkedIn or their personal email, send them a text, and then just give them a call. We follow up that call though. So follow up the call with an email. In that email, briefly summarize what you discussed, because to me, no call ever happened without an email trail. And it also helps the hiring manager know that you've actually achieved that call. Just broadly, a couple of points, really summarize, but then really get into next steps for them very quickly. And I think this is important because, like I said, if you've got somebody on garden leave and they want to start to get going in terms of their knowledge, give them the links they need to the resources, the blogs, very quickly in the process. If that's not suitable and they're going through a very busy cycle, maybe closing out a deal at the prior company so they can land that important commission before they start, they're not going to want so much. So just keep it use the right kind of template so that you can kind of delete or add what's appropriate. If you've got somebody who's starting into kind of maybe a specialist vertical, maybe give them the pointer of who is going to be their kind of partner or who they're going to learn from in that email. And then what we do here at Click, a week before they start, even before day one, we send them something in the post. So they get something that's personal and tangible. And for that individual, putting yourself in their shoes, they're thinking, oh, wow, this time next week is going to be my first day. And through the letterbox, they get a little bit of swag and they get a nice organization chart, which shows them who their manager is, how they roll up to the CEO, pictures of their teammates in a nice organization chart format, so they can see their names, they can see their faces, their job titles, so they understand where they fit in the world. They get a lovely personalized letter from our worldwide SVP, which welcomes them kind of to the company. And also a repetition of some of those resources we gave them over email. Repetition is always key in terms of onboarding. You can never say anything, more than enough times for it to be enough, really. And the really interesting thing about the swag that we put in, and a true story, is we like to put in some really interesting items in there. So we did have one new hire was so puzzled by something that he received that he absolutely then felt compelled to ring our switchboard in North America. And he said, I've got this green device and I just cannot figure out what it is. It says Click Software on it and it's green and it kind of looks like a knife, but I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have sent me a knife. Can you please help me understand what this is? And just to kind of break this down, it was actually an avocado peeler. Anybody ever seen an avocado peeler? It's a pretty quirky kind of looking item. It kind of helps you pull the stone out and then kind of peel the skin up. Yeah, it's very interesting. Anyhow, it's a true story. We do send avocado peelers out and we do actually get them calling up and telling their colleagues when they arrive on day one, I have the coolest avocado peeler. They're like, what on earth is this guy talking about? Taz, what are you sending these guys? It's like, it's swag, we have this stuff, so, But it's a nice way for them to have a bit of a story about their onboarding experience. It's a fun talking point for them on their first day. So this all happens even before somebody started. Now, for some of you, onboarding is about the day one experience. I've not even got to day one yet. So day one, we kind of give managers a really nice template of what an ideal day one would look like for their individual. They can tailor that. They then share that with the people in the office that they're going to be going into on their first day. And we make this pretty flexible. And we then put the onus on the new starter to then kind of drive as he gets into his onboarding experience, kind of building his network out, reaching out to individuals. Now, a common thing that goes wrong on day one is tech. It's kind of not uncommon for someone to not have a phone, not have a laptop. But if you think about this, if we're starting to speak to people from offer, we know pretty firmly when they're really going to start. And actually, I have to be honest, out of the 60 hires onboarded this year, only 2 didn't have their laptop on day 1. So I feel pretty proud. That's a pretty good statistic. So if you think about your own statistics, I think it's because of this process that we've managed to resolve that, because we're starting the dialogue early. We're making sure that before they start, they've got an email address, that their kit's starting to be provisioned. You're already starting that process early. And it really helps ensure that their day 1 experience is epic. So have a plan. And I mean this really from the new hires point of view. As your salesperson, they may be coming into a geo where they've got a really big deal in flight, and their manager is going to throw them into the deep end, and they're going to be on site with a customer. So their day 1 is going to be very different. They're going to be straight in there with a customer, perhaps shadowing. If they're in a technical role, they could be shadowing another engineer consultant. And what really I mean by having a plan is, if you think about your salesperson, they're on, what I would call almost like a monopoly board. They start at go, and they want to very quickly get into Mayfair very quick, because that's the money zone, right? You don't want to hang out at Old Kent Road too long, really. So, in terms of having a plan, can you articulate where I am right now versus where I should be? How do I get to the money zone? And if you have a plan, you can then very easily articulate that, because really what they're asking you is, what does good look like for me as opposed to where I am right now? Because I'm behind. They feel behind. And this is how, to Laurie's point, you can inspire action. Because simply by telling someone, this is where you are, this is where you need to be in order for you to get to money, the rest happens for you. So this is a real key tip for me in terms of having a plan, but being able to articulate it really well for that individual, very simply. Use a mix of styles. I think throughout this couple of days, we've really seen a lot of people talking about how you can use video with talking heads, how you can, build out website content collateral. And we've even heard people talking about the in-person trainings. We heard someone yesterday, they have their hires go for 3 weeks to San Ramon to do in-person training. For us at Click, we have, like I said, very seasoned sellers who've been selling for a while. They're coming into a complex SaaS selling environment. And we do onboarding in person at our head offices in Boston. Now, what we do a little bit differently is we really mix up the styles, because I don't know for you, but really going back to university and being sat there from 7:30 in the morning until 6:30 at night, listening to people talk to me all day, it's a little bit boring, because, most of my sellers, they talk for a living. So there's only so long their attention span will last. After 20 minutes, all the ADHD habits start to become prevalent. People start going for coffee breaks and bathroom breaks very frequently, especially in the afternoon, and they're not really listening. And by day 2, they're really thinking about their hangover rather than what's going on in the room. So I use a real diverse mix of styles, as you can see. And I'm not going to get into all of these, but one of the ones I want to pick out is speed dating. So how to introduce your leadership team to your new hire audience. Now, back in July, I had 32 in the room. It's quite a large group, a very small room in our head office. And rather than wheel in our leadership team like I am here in front of you, I completely switched this up into a speed dating format. So I broke the group down into groups of 4 or 5 and split them deliberately into structured groups. I provided each member of the leadership team with a visual 1-page placemat of that group. They saw their picture, their name, their hire date, where they worked before Click, and perhaps a fun fact like they support the Red Sox, or they support Manchester United, something interesting that's a talking point. And so as each group came in, the leadership were prepared, they'd done some homework, and the new hire that was coming in felt like this person actually knows a bit about me. Similarly, in the pre-work for each one of those new hires, they were given a video to watch, a video, Laurie, you'll be proud, so that they could really understand a bit about the head of professional services and what professional services do, or the head of legal and how legal impacts their deal process, or the head of finance and the different pricing mechanisms and how you work well with finance. So there's preparation on both sides, but the reason why we split them down into groups of 4 and 5 is because it's more personal. You're having a conversation one-on-one, virtually, sort of close to, but you then feel, once you've left head office, you can actually email or call that person to help you with your deal, rather than in a group setting. I'll be honest, I'm not really capturing everybody's name in the room, and neither would that leader. They're just talking to a sea of faces. But in those small 20 to 30-minute group sessions, they've made a connection. They've understood those people. They've seen their faces on the placemat. They're memorable. And at the end of the day, these are the people that are keeping the lights on. They're going to generate the revenue. They're interested. And it's a great way to kind of break up the time in the same fashion that they would be presenting to the room, just breaking it down into smaller groups. This works really well. The other thing I would say is, even during an in-person training, there's lots of different ways that you can learn. But for me, the killer thing that we do during that week is we bring everything together in the last day in the role play. So we give them lots of theory, we give them lots of hands-on with the product, and we give them opportunities to discuss it in a group setting. So there's lots of theory, discussion, and more theory, practicals, but then we bring it all to bear and they get to perform for the rest of the team. They get to role play, selling to the entire room as if they're a customer. The room then gets to give them feedback, and then we can capture that and give their manager constructive feedback that they can work on after the in-person trainings happened. So I feel like there's a really good investment there for that individual. There's also a great investment there for their manager, because they have tangible outcomes to work on. And that individual feels like they've really connected with the room by that kind of point in the week, so they feel they're getting kind of valuable advice. So it's a really nice way to kind of round off the week. By then, everybody really enjoys the networking, so they really want a gin and tonic by then. Leadership buy-in. The really great thing that I have at Click that's really helped with the onboarding is, speak to Taz and her team, because you're going to absolutely love onboarding and getting enabled here at Click. I mean, hearing that from your manager, they want to speak to me. I don't have to do anything. You know, if I then reach out to them, they're wanting to speak to me because of that warm introduction. But remember that as sales enablers, who your real customers are in your organization, if they're not on board with what you're doing, it makes things very, very difficult. And I'll be honest, I was appointed by the SVP of Worldwide Sales, and some of his leadership team were kind of like, sales enablement? Why do we need that? I chuck my guys in, they learn on the job. We don't need any of this fluffy stuff. It's like, fair enough. But over the course of this year, you know, having onboarded so many of their team, it really has become a partnership, because they see value in the relationship. I mean, you know, it's not just about the avocado peelers. They really are learning more about the product. They're really upskilling. And for many of the leaders, it becomes an integral part when you're recruiting so fast, trying to still hit quota, build pipe, work with the various different parts of the organization. You know, having a shoulder to kind of lean on that's really going to take care of enablement, onboarding, and the rest of their kind of career journey, helping them kind of be educated. It's a real given that you need this throughout, their sales kind of journey. So really, in summary, I've kind of talked about knowing your audience. Think about your timeline as not just really day one. You've got everything that leads up before that. But for each individual, they will have a different definition of when onboarding finishes. For some people, that's a week. For some, it's a month. For some, it's 6 months. So really be cognizant of the fact that your timeline is really different for each individual, and it's not something that's really prescriptive. Have a plan. Help that person know where they are. If you can do that, it really inspires action. They will then drive their own path. it really helps. Use a mix of styles. You know, I didn't really go into detail because of time, but if you really want to hear more about the really cool ways that we, rather than talk about the product, use gamification to get them on the product and, you know, clicking around, competing with their peers, you know, and really learning as, you know, hands-on. There's some really great ways that you can really mix up your styles to help people learn in the format that works for them, whether it's self-serve or you can give them the book. Leadership buy-in, critically important. It's your ticket to play. Without leadership buy-in, it's really, really difficult to kind of get traction with the sales team. And throughout all of these pieces, I would say that adoption and measurement is incredibly important. It's really important for you to be able to articulate your success and how well that you're performing in all of these things. In terms of your audience, monitor and measure, you know, how successful was your day one? Ask their manager how important was day one. Collect some metrics about this so that you can articulate your worth, because otherwise you're wasting your time. Very much in my career, it was really around knowing your numbers. What impact are you having? And so for each of these steps, whether it is where they are in the timeline, where they are in terms of the plan, the type of style, monitoring and measuring where you're having success and doing more of where you're having success is critically important, because otherwise you're really just playing in the dark. So I wanted to kind of finish with a call to action. And really, I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Jerry Maguire. Does anybody know what I'm talking about, Jerry Maguire? So it's you know, about an agent. I like to think of myself as kind of the agent, and my sales team are all my athletes. And Jerry Maguire is an agent who kind of leaves his company. He kind of tries to keep this one-star athlete. But the killer phrase in Jerry Maguire is, with me or without me. This is my sales team, with me. This is my sales team, without me. So the one call to action I would give you is to ask one question. To bring in all the tips that you've learned is ask your new hire or ask their manager or even ask your senior stakeholder, what's the one thing I could do better? So what's the one thing in the onboarding experience I could do better? Or what's the one thing I could do for your sales team that would make it better? Just that one thing, that simple question, if you ask it and slightly change the phrase, it helps people really answer directly and gives you great feedback. So that for me is my tips on onboarding. Thank you.
Streamlined, do you have one onboarding date per month? Do you do it per quarter, or is it just kind of ad hoc as you have new joiners?
So it's very flexible. So the question there was, do we have one onboarding day per month? How do we work it? It is very flexible. So going back to the point on, you've got some managers that want to throw people straight into the field. You've got others that really want to just, you know, block it out and make sure they have dedicated time to learn. So I really lean on the different geos to actually ensure that whatever day that person is starting, they have a killer day one. So that means you really need to kind of reach out to the other people in your geos, whether it's an office manager, whether it's another new hire that can buddy up with that person, or their manager. You need to make sure there is a physical human that's going to be present in the same geo, and it's completely tailored around that individual. That sounds like it's a lot of work, but actually it's not. All you're really doing is just making key contacts in those different offices, because whether it's the person that's at reception, that's then going to hand them over to somebody, but you just want to make sure there is a physical person there. Yep, at the back.
No, I love the idea about pre-day one, you know, call, letter, and email, and
goodie box. Yeah.
Now you've been acquired, about 40,000 people, right? So I think that's consistently scalable.
Absolutely. It can become part and parcel of your HR process. So this process works so well that it's for every Click employee now. Every Click employee gets a nice set of brownies, which maybe they give to their kids in their welcome box. This kind of just, phone call from somebody who's invested in their onboarding, it's really simple and low touch, low cost. Following that up with an email is, it takes kind of like an hour out of somebody's week. So it's not a huge investment on time. The swag is fun. It really is. But it has scaled really well. And I would say that of all the new hires, not just in sales, across the board, it's been a consistent, fun talking point across the piece. So it's not difficult. It just becomes part and parcel of an HR process.
That's going to be my question, actually. In terms of the onboarding that you've been talking about and sales enablement, you've been talking about the sales roles. So is that a generic onboarding program that then morphs into sales when it gets to you, or are there other onboarding processes within Click? Because that's where I'm trying to, I'm in HR, I own the onboarding process, but I'm also working in sales enablement, and they're looking at the onboarding of sales process, and there's kind of like, how does...
This was a bit chicken and egg for us. So your question is, where does this process live?
Yeah.
Because it is a bit of a grey area. Personally, I wanted to make sure that people had a killer day one. Because after you've spent that much time interviewing lots and lots of people, we were having a little bit of dropout before people actually started on day one. Because SaaS is cutthroat. People will nick your hires left, right and centre even after they've signed. And to get a role at Click, even to get to offer, there's been a lot of manpower investment just to get to that point. To then lose them before they sign was just annoyingly upsetting for me. So I just personally invested time into actually making sure that we were at least calling them. A simple human touch.
Layer over the top of something that was there.
There was nothing there. There wasn't anything there, if I'm being honest with you. There was no existing. The process, and I would say this is consistent in companies that I work for, between offer and day one, it's kind of a black zone. You might actually get a call from your hiring manager just to kind of check in, or an email. But at Click, that was pretty much the ad hoc process that happened. There wasn't really anything else. So this is a layer on top of that, which has then been replicated. Any other questions? Yeah, at the back.
You mentioned the onboarding was face-to-face in an office. How often do you run that program? Is that like every month? Is that every quarter? Or is it flexible?
Are you talking about the slide where I've got that nice picture with the mix of styles and that classroom piece? That was run once a quarter.
Okay.
So around, I would say, in our April class, we had around 23, and around July, we had around 32. If you're curious to see, actually on my LinkedIn profile, there's a cool video. So you can actually see the new hires that we onboarded, some of them that were prepared to video, but we ran that once a quarter. That was enough for us. But I think it really depends, because for me, an ideal class size shouldn't really go above 24. So when you think you're going to get to that point, that's when you need to have a class, I would say. So in some businesses, maybe once a month. For us, once a quarter worked. Yep.
Following on from that, with regards to those sessions, it's great for a big organisation of 40,000 people and you've got huge intake. For the SMEs, startups,
Yeah, it's not feasible.
what would you say from that perspective?
I wouldn't invest in in-person training if you're an SME, but that's my biased opinion. Because it's a huge amount of money. We have 17 presenters in our in-person training. We have each person flying in. I had people from Sydney, I had people from Brazil, Mexico, Italy, all over the world flying into Boston. And putting them up in a really nice hotel, all the networking we did, and salespeople can drink the bar dry. It's a lot of money to invest in in-person training. If you can actually just have a really good coach, mentor, and leverage those speakers at set intervals, video them, and feed that information at the right time using a really good coach and mentor, you can get the same result. But that's my biased personal opinion. Yeah. I think I've run over time. So any last questions? Or you can catch me all day. I'll introduce the next speaker.